Thank you to everyone who has joined the discussion today as we explore the use of mobile forms in the safety industry with Daryl Marshall from Asplundh, Australia. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go through some introductions. We're going to look at very briefly what is FastField for those of you who are not familiar with FastField. And then we're going to dive into kind of like a fireside chat where we're going to have a discussion with both Daryl and myself around safety and how mobile forms have impacted his teams and the teams at Asplundh, Australia. And then we'll wrap that up with a Q&A at the end. So please stay with us after the fireside chat. Hello, my name is Matthew Fry. I'm a founding team member here at FastField, and I've been involved in the growth and the maturity of our product here at FastField for over the past 12 years. And my goal is to evangelize and promote the power and value and the use of mobile forms for teams and organizations worldwide. I'm honored and so excited to introduce Daryl Marshall to everyone listening in. Both Daryl and I have worked together for the past 7 years and built quite a great relationship. And he and his team have driven the growth and the adoption of FastField mobile forms within Asplundh, Australia. And so this is why I'm so excited to have him on the call. And knowing Daryl and who he is, his ultimate goal is to save lives and keep his team safe on a daily basis. And you're going to get a sense of that as we have the conversation today. Daryl's attitude in combination with his experience, vision, and his team that surrounds him is why Asplundh Australia has won so many multiple safety awards and is recognized as a leader in the safety arena. Daryl, would you mind sharing a little bit more about yourself and your journey?
Certainly, Matthew. Thank you for the very nice introduction. So my name's Daryl Marshall. I work as the National Safety and Compliance Manager for Asplundh Australia. We are the Australian subsidiary of Asplundh Tree Expert LLC, based out of the USA. The organisation predominantly focuses on vegetation management for electrical network providers. The primary goal of our work is to reduce electrical interruptions and loss of supply through vegetation contacting power lines, and equally as important, depending on the regions and the areas, but certainly for us here in Australia, the mitigation and prevention of bushfires starting from trees contacting power lines. My journey in this industry started just on 30 years ago, where I joined an organisation, a separate one, as a field worker. I've spent many years just working through various field-based positions. I've been with Asplundh now for 18 years, and the last 12 years of my tenure with Asplundh has been as the National Safety and Compliance Manager. So I somewhat consider myself quite fortunate to have had those field-based experiences over time to really understand the challenges that our field workers face when it comes to working with respect to safety, and then being in a position where I've been able to influence and guide our systems and policies and procedures over the past 12 years.
Thank you, Daryl. Yeah, that's excellent. So why don't we jump in, like I mentioned before, and just take a quick peek at FastField, and then Daryl and I are going to wrap back around, and we're just going to have more conversation around safety in the field and how FastField has impacted his teams. So just to get started here, FastField is a complete and customizable mobile form solution that can be used both on Android and iOS, and can be utilized out in the field for your teams in offline environments. And so the beauty of that is, like, if you're in an area where there's not great connectivity, it's not going to be an issue at all to collect your data and make sure you capture photos, GPS tagging, time stamping, signature captures, and then have that data go back to your repository of choice, whether that be, a cloud service or QuickBase. So really the ability to capture that data in the field is what FastField is all about. Typical use cases would be like daily logs, progress reports, incident reporting, asset management, safety audits, job site reporting, equipment inspections, risk assessments, timesheets, and toolbox talks. And you're going to hear a few of these today in our discussion as well. and really any other customizable mobile form that you would like to create. And so I really like when we talk about FastField to break it down into 3 steps. And just so you know, you're going to first build your form in FastField's online portal, or if you're a QuickBase user, you can actually have a table within QuickBase and quickly import that table directly into FastField, and it will create a form. You'll then deploy that form out to your field. And once that form has been deployed out to the field, your team can capture that data. So boots on the ground, taking pictures and collecting that information that you need, and then ultimately submitting that form and having it come back into the database of your choice. Again, that could be QuickBase, SharePoint, FTP folders, and those sorts of solutions that you're looking to post that data into. And so really that's the 3 steps when we're looking at FastField, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding before we jump in to this conversation that we're going to have today with Daryl and myself. So let's jump in. Daryl, let's get started and let's talk about safety today at Asplundh, Australia.
Okay, so I guess as an opening, our approach to safety recognises the critical obligation we have to the safety of our workforce and anybody who might be impacted by our work. So at Asplundh here, we treat this obligation as an opportunity, and it's something that the management team is very, very passionate about. The organisation has just celebrated its 95th anniversary, and throughout this time, safety has remained as the first consideration in every decision we make. So given our people perform their work in predominantly high-risk environments all of the time, it's absolutely paramount for us that we ensure that we have measures in place to help them understand the hazards and risks associated with their tasks so that they can perform them safely, not just on a one-off basis, but repetitively time and time again. So without a doubt, it really is in the company's DNA, and it's in our blood how we look after and approach safety.
Yeah, so that's fantastic, Daryl. Thank you so much. So given today's discussion is around Asplundh Australia's digital transformation, how are you tracking your safety processes in the past? And what drove you to look into a more dynamic and digital way to manage these processes today?
So prior to our digital transformation, all of our field-based risk management processes were recorded using paper-based forms. They were either in a single sheet or a carbon book of either duplicate or triplicate. Information was then manually extracted and transferred into spreadsheets, pivot tables, then graphed. It was very time-consuming and ultimately a lag indicator by the time the information was actually available to be reviewed. So in 2015, we commenced a comprehensive revision of our safety management system designed to support some operational growth we were looking to do. At the same time, we wanted to improve safety-related behaviour, which supported and sustained a safe working culture. We ultimately wanted a culture where people work safely because they genuinely see the value in doing so, and not purely because a rule or a procedure requires them to do so. We wanted an environment in which informed decisions are made with the consideration of personal motivators. And also in support of this, we wanted to incorporate the principles of what's termed safety differently. And there's 3 key principles to that, those being people are the solution, not a problem to control. Safety is an ethical responsibility, not a bureaucratic accountability. And safety is the presence of positive capacities and not the absence of negative events. So to drive this, we needed good systems, good procedures, good processes, and from that, really credible data. So the paper-based systems, whilst comprehensive, were becoming increasingly difficult to manage and collate records as our business expanded. They had limitations also on what could be included and captured. So you'll have restrictions on page size, content structure, document control, delays in updates, servicing multiple clients with specific need. etc. So all of these were introducing barriers to our objectives. So just to go back for an example, on your paper-based systems, again, you're limited in what you're going to put on that page. If you've got multiple books printed up in duplicate or triplicate, you're often reluctant to make changes because those documents become immediately redundant, out of date. You need to get more printed, etc. So we were really looking for a digital solution to help us drive these changes. So ultimately, a user-friendly system which would allow us to tailor the content to suit our risk management and our business objectives, capture information from field-based users on phones and tablets, and then seamlessly deliver that to the back end, where we could then analyze and more effectively and credibly assess the data that was received.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I would assume going and trying to find that information in 30 boxes over in the side corner of the office would be not easy, right? And then let's say, someone asks for, hey, could you look for that report from, 3 weeks ago? Not easy to find when we're talking paper-based, right? And I think that's partly why moving towards this digital transformation is really important. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I guess bouncing off of that, I would just love to hear more about the solution that you created with Fastfield.
Certainly. So we initially trialed several systems, and while some had come close, inevitably they all came up short really on and couldn't deliver what we were seeking. So in 2017, we identified Fastfield as a viable option. In October 2017, after undertaking initial build of some of our key processes, we rolled out a trial amongst a group which we thought would probably be one of our greatest challenges. There's no use doing a trial with the people that are going to make it easiest for you. So we selected some of our older and less tech-savvy workers within one of our specific parts of the business. So that trial group represented around 5% of our field workers, and the trial continued for a couple of months until the end of December. So that trial was extremely positive, and I think it's fair to say we haven't looked back since. Fastfield delivered everything we wanted and more. It became a catalyst for positive change. It revolutionised how we manage numerous aspects of safety and compliance. In fact, the functionality Fastfield provided not only met our needs, but probably would be fair to say surpassed them, and introduced us to a range of possibilities that we actually hadn't even considered at that time. I think a crucial thing to point out here for the audience today is that I don't, and at the time certainly didn't consider myself to be a tech-savvy person, yet I found Fastfield extremely easy to use and understand, and it's enabled me to design and develop and transition all of the forms and processes that we have today in Fastfield myself. Now, certainly there's been a great deal of input from our field users in designing and tweaking and making those better along the way. But I think the key point to make is that as a safety professional, I was able to own all of those safety processes, and I didn't need to rely on a large team of IT people or a third party to build and develop everything that we've been able to do. And I see that as being absolutely pivotal to the solution's success. And a perfect example of that is anyone can call me at any time and propose a change to a form, and where it's viable, I can make that change then and there, publish it live at the press of a button, and it goes out to the rest of the organisation with absolutely seamlessly. And that's been really important and has assisted in building that culture where our workforce owns these processes.
Yeah, completely. And that's a story I hear quite often is if you're going to be building it from the workforce that's actually using it day in, day out, feet on the ground, they know what they're looking for. They know what they need. And I would just encourage everybody that's listening in, when you're thinking about mobile forms or creating, solutions for those teams that are actually out there collecting the data, it's oftentimes, just like you said, Daryl, it's getting them involved in providing feedback so that you can make those changes, those alterations that really hit home on what you need from a management perspective, but how that makes it nice and easy for those team members to collect that data, right? So it's this combination of working together to fine tune that solution. So I love that, and I think it's really important to keep those eyes open and ears open to the teams in the field. And doesn't hurt, by the way, Daryl, like that you started out in the field yourself, right? Not that you have to, but that didn't hurt in your experience through the growth of understanding the importance of that. So, well, you know, what were the steps after the initial trial? Because you talked about, hey, we had this initial trial, we got that rolling, it was super successful. What about after that? What happened? How did you expand that out?
Well, it became apparent very, very early in the trial that we had found our solution just by the level of engagement that the trial group was providing. So based on that, we actually commenced replicating forms in preparation to rolling them out to the remaining 95% of the field operations before the trial was even over. And then in early January 2018, we rolled an initial selection of those forms out to all of the field operations in the remainder of the business, and continued to grow and develop more in the coming months. And by mid-2018, we had actually transitioned all of the critical field-based risk management forms and processes needed into Fast Field, and it was working extremely well across the organisation.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. And I remember working with you and watching how that did expand. And that was super exciting to see that happening. So, and I know, like in any system, you know, I always want to, we don't always want to ask this question, but hey, it's important. You know, were there any issues or challenges you encountered during the rollout to the remainder of the organization?
Overall, it went far more seamlessly than I would have intended, given the significant change of it transitioning a whole range of paper processes to a digital system. It was just like people had been desiring something like that for a long time, and we were clearly moving into a world of gamification, etc., and digital devices becoming very prevalent in everybody's lives. So to be able to tap into that resource and see it utilised so effectively was very reassuring. There was probably only one issue that I could think of, and that was there was a little bit of, I wouldn't say resistance, but feedback that it's taking too long to fill out this form. It takes me much longer than it did on the paper-based form. And when we looked into it, we recognised that it was simply because the forms were contained a lot more content, contained a lot more information than the previous. For example, if you just had an A4 with a checklist on it, it really became a tick and flick process that people just ticked, completed what they need to, and moved on with their day. Now people were reading through a new style of the form in a digital format. We were able to put in the why and the purpose of the form. So previously, you would have people say, I don't even really know why we have to complete this form. Every form now starts with the purpose, explains the why it's important, whether it be from a legal perspective, a safety perspective, an organisational perspective, a client perspective. All of those things can be captured and explained. There's a whole range of different drop-down selections. So there's a lot more information in the form. Once the users understand how to use it, it's incredibly user-friendly. As you know yourself, we have some amazingly complex forms in the background that are absolutely seamless for a user to use when selecting the relevant criteria to what they're doing. So having the ability to do that, and just a little bit of a teething around how to use that by the users, was probably what I would say was the only challenge that people face. But if you ask any of those people who are around at that time now how they find the form, they will sell it to you and tell you how great this process is and how much it's benefited them since the inception of Fast Field.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, you know, at the beginning, they're just ticking off, you know, checklists here, but now they're fully engaged because you're asking questions, you're providing depth to the type of reasoning why you're asking those questions. And then when they're providing that information back, I'm assuming that's what you mean, how it's helping them in their daily jobs, right? Because that information that you're gathering that you weren't getting before is now making their job better. So I'm just curious, do you have a little thought on how that made their job better? Because you mentioned that at the very end there, that it is in fact, something that they would advocate for.
Yeah, certainly. So some of I think the key ones sit around firstly from a compliance perspective. There's a lot of regulation around most industries and businesses these days. It's to remove the potential for workers to omit information. It's where information is required, we simply make that field mandatory. So as you know, the form won't submit until that information is captured. So we don't sit in a position now where critical information is not captured. Geolocations and timestamps were probably two of the real drivers of change and ensuring that people were doing things right. Initially, we didn't let users know that we were geolocating and timestamping certain parts of forms in the background because we actually wanted to understand how work was being done. You and I have had many discussions around work as imagined and work as done. So Fastfield enabled us to really understand a bit of how work was being done. Pre-starts, for example, were they being done before a vehicle was driven? What time were they being done if they weren't? How long were they taking to be completed? All that sort of thing. So we got some insights around that. And from that, we were able to address some issues and assure people that information was really being captured to validate the processes and to drive processes being completed as intended and when intended. So they became very integral factors in the success. Providing better options. So again, drop downs. You have a whole range of options of information we can put in now. We have a much more comprehensive evaluation process, and we can see from the back end and reviewing forms how effectively they're completed. From a safety manager's perspective, and even an operational manager's perspective, where we're now using them in an operational space, we get to make much more informed decisions based on credible data. We have a lot of lead indicators now, all of which combine to enable effective early intervention with regard to emerging risks. We have over 800,000 forms have now been submitted over that period of time since we commenced with Fastfield. 200,000 of them are site risk assessments. And yeah, we really have a great understanding of where risk sits in our business and how we can more effectively manage it.
Yeah, that's excellent. So it does sound like all of these additional items ended up helping your teams feel more safe out in the field as well, right? So the more of that information that they're collecting, the more information you have to help keep them safe and to follow up on for toolbox talks or other items that might need to be talked about, right? And so again, to your earlier point is, hey, at first we got a pushback, but then they realize, wow, this is keeping me safe. I get to go home and see my wife or my family or my friends because I'm safe, right? And that's big. That's very important. And that's about, that's keeping people safe on a daily basis. So it's great to hear. So just curious, like, is there a particular form or example you would like to share with the audience that might shed some light on our conversation and the items that we've covered today?
There are two that I've chosen to probably highlight as part of this, and I really appreciate we're limited in time and there's so many factors we can't really even cover today. But before I cover up on these two, you just made a good point that being able to embed information into the forms is critical. So you can embed PDF documents that link to certain things. You can embed videos that give examples of how work should be performed safely or tasks that can be performed safely. But the two examples I've picked, given the risk involved to our business. So felling trees is a critical risk within our business, and it becomes even more critical when people are doing it around electrical networks. There's a whole range of protocols that need to go in place to do it safely. So we created a tree felling stump evaluation form, and what the users do is they take a photo of the stump once the tree has been felled. And for those with experience in the industry, they can read that stump, and there's a whole range of criteria the users assess themselves against. So we can determine based on the pictures they provide, and we'll see some examples on the screen here that really show this. We can see how the scarf's been performed, how much hinge wood is left, where the back cut is in position to the scarf. All of these things are really important. Now, previously, a supervisor would only see that if he went out on site. Our contracts cover from Victoria and southern Australia on the east coast right through to the northern Queensland. Tens of thousands of square miles, I imagine, in your terminology. That would take a long time for a supervisor to get out and see all of these activities. They can desktop review multiple sites, multiple locations, multiple operators in a very short window of time by reviewing these forms, understanding how the person has assessed themselves, whether they've got it right, the evidence in the photos, and then if they have got it wrong, we know where to correct and who to put our time and invest our time in helping correct and understand it. And the workers know they're providing this information, again, for surety that they're doing it right, but again, for guidance and additional training if they are getting it wrong. So that's one of many of those interaction types we have where supervisors can desktop review an absolute plethora of information at a desktop. And again, that reduces driving, which is one of our greatest risks. It reduces fuel costs. It reduces emissions. It gives people time back. There's a whole range of flow on things. And this ties back into what I said earlier about Fastfield provided us with advantages that we never even saw at the time. Probably the second one I'd like to showcase is our near-miss reporting, near-miss hazard and improvement reporting. The slide here shows that we've had approximately 7,500 submissions in that time. Now, they're all leading indicators of potential for harm that we've been able to graph and trend and gauge across different businesses, different risk categories, etc. We tie that into behavioural observations, site risk assessments, a whole range of other hazard categories, etc. And again, these all provide us with early intervention points where we can start monitoring our risk profiles. This in itself has helped us re-establish a timescale and a series of tailgate topics throughout the year that actually are proactive in communicating this starts happening at this time of year. You know, we move into the wet weather, so slips, trips and falls or off-road driving risks. We move into the summer, snakes, emergency response to snake bite, bushfire prevention. We can be very proactive in those, whereas in the past we tended to be much more, this happened, this is what we should have done, this is what can avoid it. So it's been absolutely incredibly insightful in helping us change that culture. But more importantly, we've made it non-punitive. So people are comfortable reporting these things because there's no penalty for reporting. They realise the value of sharing this information. They realise it goes to others. There's an example here of a crew who had a failure. They actually took a photo of what went wrong, reported it, and they even made a video to share with the remainder of the group on what should have been done right. So for people to highlight their own mistakes in that manner, recognise the benefit of it is, I think, a great indication of how all of this is tied together to really help build and structure our culture.
That's fantastic. I'm sure everybody who's listening in and working with safety on a daily basis, this is really great information that you're providing and stories. Daryl, can you recap the benefits that the digital forms has provided for Asplundh Australia?
Absolutely. And I apologise if some of these I may have already touched on, but in less than 12 months, we eliminated all paperwork from our field vehicles. Printing costs were reduced by over $70,000 per annum. Document control and currency of documents in the field is always maintained, and that was something we had quite a problem with. So ever since Fastfield has been introduced, we've not had one issue of a crew having non-current documentation in the field. The forms have been built in a way that's user-friendly and streamlines the recording of information. The rules within the forms, as we mentioned, remove the optionality for information to be omitted, which that's made strong improvements from a compliance perspective. The application works offline, ensuring forms can be completed anywhere, and users just simply sync them when they come back into connectivity. Completed forms submit to dedicated accounts, allowing supervisors, managers, admin personnel, and in some cases, even clients immediate access. We have simple to complex dashboards to track information from set fields. We can make simple to advanced data search queries. The information can be extracted in multiple formats. So a submitted form can be pulled out as a PDF, and Excel, CSV, a whole range of other formats. Record keeping is automated, so in the background it keeps records of the previous versions. So for those that have ISO requirements around document control, etc., all of that record keeping of the forms is automated. The supporting documents and references can have embedded information such as YouTube videos to support training materials, or PDFs to support information in site risk assessments. Without going into too much detail, the data we have received from our hazard site risk assessment around our fire risk management and our fire controls actually enabled us to broker several $100,000 reduction in our public liability insurance premiums by proving that we were not working on high-risk fire days. Where signatures are required and the sign-off is needed, very detailed acknowledgements are now included. Now that's heightened workers' awareness of the responsibility of what they're signing for, and has accordingly delivered notable safety improvements. The field workers are empowered to raise issues, and they can actually readily address and close out actions in many cases themselves. And probably just on a final note, on the success of what we did in Australia in 2018, my New Zealand counterpart and myself spent a week together. We replicated our whole system for them in New Zealand, and within a matter of 4 days, transitioned them from paper-based systems to digital versions as well. We have over 100 electronic forms specifically relating to safety and operational requirements now. And yeah, again, the system has worked seamlessly for us. And that whole time, we've never had one day where the server's gone down, a form hasn't submitted or anything like that. So it's been highly successful for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. So we've explored the importance of safety and how technology, particularly Fastfield, has revolutionized Asplundh's safety program by providing a proactive process that strives to keep everyone safe in the field on a daily basis. So thank you, Daryl, for being with us today and for taking the time to share your experiences and benefits of how mobile forms has been a positive impact for Asplundh Australia. So thank you to everyone listening in and joining us on the Fireside Chat. Please stick around for the open Q&A session coming up next.